flickering, yeah. There we go. Oh, we got it. You're not up there though, huh? Oh, there we go.
All right. First order of business, the approval of minutes. They've been reviewed. Recommend approval.
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. RDA on 422 Waverly Road.
A number of weeks ago, and you asked the applicant to file an after-the-fact RDA with an alternatives analysis, which I think you'll find a pretty detailed one in your packets, kind of showing the difficulty in locating a generator off the back of the house, given all the windows, a gas vent, a dryer vent, which pretty much encompass the whole back of the house, and would require the applicant to put the generator out in the middle of the backyard. And since there's young children at the residence, that didn't seem like to have in the middle of the small backyard, the generator. To put it on the far side of the house away from the wetland is a slab garage, so I don't know how you describe it. The pipe would have had to have
Pipe
run.
would have had to come out, up and over the garage. It would be an exposed pipe to get the gas to the...
Other side of the
and
house.
that's-
So they're only a foot inside the no-build zone, very close to the edge of the existing structure, which was built, I think, quite 60 prior to the bylaw regulations. So given that alternatives analysis and their proposal to provide mitigation, including one post out by the road and some additional buffer zone plantings, and to mark the outside of the fence with our wetland markers as mitigation for the slight incursion into the no-build zone. That's the proposal in front of you.
Any questions, Joe? I have no questions. I do have one, actually. Where the air conditioner condenser is, I guess you could put it there.
Well,
Is that the one that the garage had to go over?
yeah, according to, according to the regulations on the generator, it has to be 5 feet away from any window, gas vent, or anything like that. So with the air conditioner, initially when we were talking about getting it, I said, we'll just tuck it in right next to the air conditioner. But when we actually had the contractor come out, he said, no, you can't do that.
Well, that little circle in the back of the house, that's the heating discharge?
That's a gas vent.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jen, you had said that they needed to put like 3 or 4 shrubs in the back, so have
They
you talked?
propose that as mitigation. It's actually out front by the road. You can see those 3 circles there. Maybe they can fit 4, depending on what size shrubs they get.
Okay,
That's where they would go.
ready, thank you.
Yeah, we've said in the spring, we'll have somebody, I'll come down and I'll find out exactly the right shrubs to place, and we'll go over it again, exactly where to place them.
Okay, good. And then also with the wetland marker and then the
Yes.
the
It's gonna go on the
pressure-treated
fence.
post that you're going to
Yep.
put in to have a marker there as well.
Yep,
Okay, good, thank you.
you're welcome. Thank
Doug?
you.
Motion?
So it would be a negative, well, it'd be approve the waiver request of the 50-foot no-build zone based on the alternatives analysis would be the first.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
And then to issue a negative number 3 determination to approve the installed generator and after-the-fact mitigation, including documentation where necessary, and also the addition of shrubs.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that's unanimous. All set.
Okay, so no, I'm going to recommend they just continue the enforcement order until the shrubs are installed, and then they would release that.
Perfect.
Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Next order of business is 242-70-41. 02 Pike Street.
So,
Thank you.
That's a blast.
you want today's plan? Excellent, thank you.
Good evening.
It's been a while since we've been talking about this.
How long's it been?
Early October.
We opened with October, yeah.
Yeah, wow. Long time.
We have some answers. So good evening, Greg Hockmuth from Williams and Sparagus, here representing the applicant. The ANRAD filed for 336 North Main Street and 0 Turnpike Street in North Andover. It has two addresses because the town line splits the parcel almost down the middle. We filed in ANRAD, also with Middleton, and we have an ORAD approving the resource area boundaries on that side. We were back before the commission early October discussing our findings and discussing a site visit that we had. And at that meeting, we were asked to go back and do a little bit more digging to try to do as much research as we could to support our claim that the channel that was filled on the property was a non-jurisdictional intermittent stream. So we did that. One of the recommendations by Commissioner Lynch was that we take a look to see if there's a highway layout available for this reach of 114, which there is, and to see if that might shed some light on the source of hydrology in the D-series isolated vegetated wetland up in the northwest corner of the parcel. Upon reviewing the layout, we discovered that there's an easement going across the abutting parcel from a catch basin that's just off Route 114 in the highway layout. It looks like originally, before the easement was created, there was 2 concrete head walls and a cast iron pipe that went under 114. It didn't flow from a resource area, it just more than likely captured highway runoff and acted as some sort of an equalizer for both sides of the highway. When you go out there today, on the south side of 114, our client side of 114, there's a catch basin now in the area where the head wall was shown. And the catch basin has been positioned such that it doesn't capture any runoff from 114 itself. I think the ditch that used to be there has been filled in. There's a catch basin there now. So really the only flow that it sees is sheet flow from the abutting parcel to us. When we looked at that catch basin, we saw it full of water. We went out during a rainstorm and we put some biodegradable dye in that catch basin just to see if it came through the easement onto our parcel into the isolated vegetated wetland. The pipe is supposed to be a 15-inch asphalt-coated corrugated metal pipe, which I've never heard that before, but I guess it's probably pretty old. The easement was created in 1970. Okay. After we put the dye in, it was raining pretty good. After we put the dye in, we went to the wetland. We didn't see anything. It was a green-colored dye. We went out there the next day. We still didn't see anything. 2 days later, we started to see some green dye in the wetland. So we came to the conclusion that there's either an obstruction in the pipe's been compromised, water's slowly getting through that area and contributing to, in our opinion, the major source of hydrology within that isolated vegetated wetland. So that was one question that we were able to answer, but the big question still remained, was that system connected to the C-series that's down here? So we dug a series of test pits between the wetland and an area drain that we found on the site. The property owners brought us over, showed us an area drain that they installed, which was in the location of the ditch that you can see in some of the aerials. It almost lined up perfectly. We dug a trench between the wetland and that area drain. We went down 8 feet, didn't see anything. About 2 feet down, we encountered seasonal high water, and then just below that, it got really wet. We're pretty sure that the material we were in, down around 3 feet, was virgin material. So the amount of fill was on average about 2 to 2.5 feet, which seems to make sense with the elevation of the adjacent wetland and where we think the ditch was. We were told by the property owners that the area drain and pipe that they put in didn't connect to the C-Series wetland. We were told that it discharged into a nest of boulders that acted as almost like a dry well. We weren't able to confirm that before the last hearing, but since then, we've gone out to the site and done several test pits on several different days. They brought us over to where they thought the nest of boulders was. Sure enough, we dug down, we found boulders. We kept chasing it back towards the area drain, and we uncovered the end of a 15-inch high-density polyethylene pipe, which was the pipe that they put in that ditch. That pipe we traced all the way back to the area drain. So what we were told was accurate, that it did discharge into a nest of boulders. Below the boulders, we didn't encounter any other pipes. The water was somewhat backed up. When we dug into the boulders, it released some of the water that was in the area drain. So the nest of boulders wasn't working very well. But below the boulders, in between the C-Series and the boulders, we didn't find any pipe. One of the other things we were asked was we were told by the property owners again that they had blasted some ledge up in this area here and excavated it out to create more area for their operations. And they used that material elsewhere on site as fill to create more level surfaces. But they said when they did that activity that that area was always wet after that, and it was a nuisance, so they piped it. And they piped it all the way to here. So with that information, we were under the impression that the major source of hydrology within the C-Series BVW was from that spring or whatever's weeping out of the blasted ledge area. But we didn't have the evidence to support it. Since the last meeting, we went out and again we dug another series of trenches and test pits. And test pit 3 that we show on the plan, down around 6 feet, we encountered a very high water table, and down around 8 feet, we found a 24-inch corrugated metal pipe, which is the same size pipe that you can see when you go down to the C-Series BVW. And the water that we saw, we feel like we scratched the top of that pipe and may have compromised the pipe slightly. But the water got really turbid, and when we went down and looked at the outlet, sure enough, there was silty water coming out. So it was just more evidence that it was more than likely connected. We have all those, we created memos. Chris Baragis from my office, who's a professional engineer, was out doing the test pits, overseeing the digging, and he put together memos each time he was out there, which we submitted for the record. Which documented his findings, depths, and what he saw and when. One of the other things we were asked to do by the commission was the water coming out of here is very, very brown. And just knowing the activities on the site and the historic dumping that's occurred, the commission wanted us to do a test of that water to see if it contained any contaminants or anything that would be of concern. So we contracted with Luke Fabry, who's an LSP from a company called Geological Field Services. He went with Chris Baragis on site on October 16th, shortly after the last conservation meeting we were at, and took a water sample just below the 24-inch corrugated metal pipe. The sample was collected to test for volatile organic compounds, extractable petroleum hydrocarbons with target compounds, and total RCRA metals. I'm not familiar with any of those. Luke is. He's licensed to do this. When we got the report back, which we submitted to the commission, the report concluded that the discoloration observed at the mouth of the drain pipe is just iron and manganese oxides and is not indicative of a reportable release of oil and/or hazardous materials at the property. And he goes on to say this condition is very common for land that has been filled or disturbed. So that was good news. Before Luke went out to the site, Luke Fabry, we hired another company. Our goal was to send some sort of a camera down that pipe. That would have been the easiest thing to do. A company called EST Associates, Inc., who specializes in this sort of thing, came out to the site on October 17th. Actually, it was the day after the LSP was here. Chris Baragis from my office met him on site. They attempted to camera the line. They got in about 6 to 10 feet, encountered a large boulder, heavy sediment, and didn't feel as though it made sense to go any further. They thought their equipment would just get stuck. So that's why we really had to do that additional test pit to further investigate that area. Let me see.
There were some compounds in the water testing.
Yeah,
to
that's true.
worry about.
That's a good point. So the report that we submitted by GFS, it did say that toluene was detected at 1 part per billion below the applicable reportable concentration for toluene. Naphthalene was detected at 4 parts per billion below its reportable threshold. Total arsenic was detected below the reportable threshold, some barium. And he goes on to talk about the thresholds and what's reportable, what isn't. It's a 18-page report, so it's pretty detailed. We had a site visit last Friday where we, Commissioner Manzi and myself, walked the site, and I walked him through our process, what we did, when we did it, how we came to our conclusions. We started at the catch basin and just worked our way down. We then went over, and Mr. Manzi had a conversation with the property owner and was able to ask him questions, and I'm hoping that he submitted some type of report to the commission detailing his findings. But to make a long story short, we feel as though we've done everything possible to examine the site, and I think what we found does support our conclusion, and I don't know what else we could do to further investigate the area to come up with anything different than what we've come up with. That, yes, a ditch was filled out here. Based on some photos that we saw, it looked like at some point in time it was damp. Some of those photos that we saw show a shadow within that channel. But the channel doesn't appear to connect, and we couldn't find any photos that show it connecting. The project next door, the design plans that were prepared by GZA in 2003, flagged a wetland that was much larger than the wetland that I flagged in the northwest corner of the parcel. Even though their wetland was larger, it didn't extend to the property line. It didn't show a stream channel. It didn't show any type of a connection, even to that area where there probably was a pipe. We still haven't seen a pipe coming out of that bank, but we have observed water weeping out of that bank. Whether it was filled or is completely submerged, we just don't know. So I think we have a drainage ditch that's within the, well, a drain that's within that easement that slowly discharges some water into that isolated vegetated wetland, but it's not enough to continue it through the site. And based on our test pits that we've done out here, we've done a bunch, there is a very high water table. It's a very flat site. A lot of the fill that's been brought in there is poorly drained. The area drain really doesn't even work. It's higher than it really should be. Nothing's graded towards it. And in talking with the owners, it really didn't bother them because based on what we've heard from them, that ditch rarely carried water, even when it was there. And it was really only after major storm events.
No, I'm actually, heavily altered sites are always complicated, but boy, oh boy, we had some suspicions, and, I think they certainly were, good suspicions worth exploring, and you've done that. I don't think that we could ask anything more of it. But what we really have is no hydraulic connection to any other resource area that was large enough to make these, an actual resource area, too isolated as opposed to connected. And nothing upgrading, feeding it, so, the highway drain that's an issue onto the Mass DOT itself, whether they want to exercise rights in that easement. We're not going to act on the easement. We have nothing to say about that. But it's there legally on their property. That's between DOT and the landowner. But, yeah, thank you. I think you've done a good job looking into that. Just want to be clear on those other elements that were found in the water sampling and analysis. They were all below reporting level. So not even below action level, but below reporting level.
No,
So
they were above reporting level. Because I think his report showed 1 part per billion on toluene.
He
And
said was detected at 1 part per billion below the applicable GW2 reportable concentration for toluene.
he had a table that showed, it should be in your,
Yeah, this says below the applicable reportable concentration.
you're reading from the summary, his summary letter as opposed to the actual
Yeah.
analysis results.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I was looking at too. And that's what I want to be clear on is that, when you have filled land and you have those types of uses, there are going to be some elements that are in there. But, that's why there are reportable levels and why there are action levels, prescribed by, DEP under 21E. And, as an LSP, he's got a responsibility to report them if they are in fact above. So we would never act on a 21E question anyway, but it's good to know that the water that had color in it was worth looking at, and, iron and manganese was always a likely candidate, and I think this concludes that that's what it was. I'm all set.
so see the naphthalene, the result was 4, and the reporting limit is 1. And then for toluene, the result was 1, and the reporting limit is 1. But it doesn't mean there's some other, I didn't
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah, that's odd because the summary contradicts some of the tables.
Right, so if you look at the table,
Page 7.
so the naphthalene is 4.
It's even bolded as, that would be an indication of,
1, yeah.
and actually, the
I
two,
don't think that affects the ORAD. I just think it's something that,
Yeah, maybe something that our client should be concerned with.
yeah, we would never, first of all, 21E out trumps us anyway. You can do remediation in a wetland if DEP says you have to. This is part of the record here, and we're not going to act on that, but this is only an ORAD anyway.
That's right.
So at that point, we're going to,
And our client's still in his due diligence, so he's going to, he's got some other work to do outside the ORAD, and I'm sure that's something that I'll bring to his attention for sure.
not that, you're not an expert, you're by your own admission, and neither am I, but my understanding is I think toluene and naphthalene are both indicators of diesel and gasoline, diesel fuel and gasoline. The background elements that you're going to find in those things, among other things, but chances are that's probably the likely source, just something that's either on property or something that was in the soil brought into the property.
There's been a few trucks out here over the years.
And the abutter of this property wasn't,
That's right.
it was an issue.
On both sides.
Without beating that to death.
Both sides.
The concern was the color of the water in the resource area, and I think we've narrowed that down to be iron or manganese, and those are quite common background elements you're going to find in the rock in this area. So.
Right.
Well, I have 2 things. One of them, I know you're representing clients who wants to purchase this property. There's a lot of question marks, I think. You've done a great job, don't get me wrong. I don't know what the plan is for them to develop this property. But the NOI is going to be more stringent.
Well, you bring up a good
Because
point.
there's a lot of underground pipe that on your own admission, are there. We don't know
Right.
where they go.
That's right. So more investigation is going to be needed, and even if there's no hydrology connecting that area today. If anything's done to 114 that improves that drainage, we need to plan for that. We need to design accordingly if we are the engineers for a project out here. It's still a jurisdictional isolated vegetated wetland. We still have a BVW down here, so you're right.
So there's a lot of work, there's still work to be done, there's still some questions. And like I said, there's piping that we don't know where it goes. So I'm just saying, I mean, I know you're representing the client. I wouldn't touch a site with a 10-foot pole. That's my personal opinion. So there's a lot of question marks, and usually when that happens, I just walk away. But that's your job, and that's your client's job. But the NRAD I won't have a problem with. I will have a problem with the NOI.
Fair enough.
Thank you. Deb?
You could tell Mr. Napoli is passionate about this piece of land.
I'm sure Mr. Hartman is very passionate about this piece of land.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. You did a very good job on your investigation and your findings, and really appreciate all of your efforts.
Thank you.
Doug?
I have no questions. Good job.
Thank you.
Motion?
So it would be approving the delineation as shown on the plan dated February 11th, 2018, unless the plan, February 22nd, right? What does that say?
Yep, today, hot off the press.
Oh, okay,
The only thing we added were the test pits.
yeah.
We thought that it was important that they make it onto the plan.
So, sorry, February 27th, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous.
Thank you. Thanks for your
Thank you.
patience.
All right, next one is 242-1746, 495 Main Street.
Great.
So,
Hey, Greg. All right. All right, thanks.
Monica, and this is just the presentation.
Oh, excellent. So the 11 by 17s are for Monica too? Just this is
Yeah, just
one?
that's for you.
So cute. So I'll pull up those
Pull it up.
presentation plans.
Get there.
Permitting plan. Sorry, I'm not using my laptop tonight, so I'm sort of challenged. There we go. Any particular sheet you want to start with?
You can start with the existing conditions right now. So, I'm Jacob Murray, Waterfield Design Group. We're the civil engineer representing the town of North Andover on the recreational field complex project. I figured we were here in January. I'll give a brief recap of the site and then talk about where we've been since then, and then we can move on from there. Existing site, we have a parking area that's within the 100-foot buffer zone, which is what has required the notice of intent. If you want to move on to the next one. Oops. The overall site is to resurface and improve the drainage in that existing area, with an existing pavement in that area. And then for the greater project, we are redoing the field entirely with 2 multi-purpose fields, a full-size baseball field, a softball field, a lot of other amenities, 2 half-court basketball courts, 2 multi-purpose courts, concessions, playgrounds, and an amphitheater, and a number of walking paths as well through the site. And this has been developed by the town over a number of informational meetings and where the town has really come together and helped to design this and develop what is put before you. So we also have about 297 parking spaces, and we're increasing by about 60 trees of what is on site now. So we submitted plans December 20th, 2018, and then we had a meeting on the 9th of January with the Conservation Commission here, and then at that meeting, it was decided that there would be a peer review. So the peer review went through, Horsey Witten reviewed our plans, got us back comments on the 22nd of January. We responded with revised plans on the 30th of January. A lot of the stuff that they had requested was informational. The big design change I can tell you from that was that we added tree pits, tree box filters, which are low-impact development in the parking area. So we have that on the plans. Basically, the trees that you see there, instead of just being a typical tree planted in grass, they're actually a curb cut so that water will run into them, filter through the sand, provide water for the tree that will help clean the water, and then any overflow goes to the infiltration system. So that was probably the big change in the design from the Horsley Witten comments. They got us back comments again on the 19th of February, a couple few minor ones back and forth. Probably the biggest one of that, it was just solidifying a operation and maintenance plan that was a standalone document that can be handed off at the end of this procedure to those who will be maintaining the field, so they have a standalone document that's not buried in amongst the stormwater reports and all the other paperwork that they can use to maintain the various stormwater and other elements of the site. And then after that letter, we got a third letter, peer review letter, basically saying that we had met all the comments of the peer reviewer at that point. So we had really a clean bill of health from the peer reviewer at that point in time. And so the town is looking to hopefully be able to move forward and maybe close out the hearing tonight. There's another planning board meeting where we'll be discussing lights, parking, all those other things, and continuing that conversation with the planning board on March 5th, next Tuesday.
Do you want to talk about the alternatives
It's
analysis?
just, yeah, so we just, we did updated alternative analysis, just detailing one of the things that has been really heavy on the, in the planning board meeting has been the residents, abutting residents' concern for parking, is that they're really concerned that, that there won't be enough parking on this site and that they'll end up, whether on special events or even on regular occasions, having people parking along Parker Street and some of the other side streets. And so because of that, we held the existing pavement along in the existing paved area where we're really resurfacing and kind of regrading with improving making drainage improvements. And that was, and we're concerned that if we have to start moving or reducing that pavement, that there's going to be residential concern at the planning board level. So that was one of the ideas. Other stuff, I know I talked about shifting the hillside here. The issue with that is that we have the staircase itself, in order to meet ADA requirements, can't be any steeper, because you have to have that 5-foot level landing both at the bottom and the top. And then in this situation, because there's so many stairs, there's actually a level landing that's required in the middle. And that had left us with where we are today in our design, increasing the low-impact development, increasing the tree box filters within that paved area, treating the water much better for water quality and water quantity purposes as required by the DEP regulations, and maintaining the existing pavement where it is today.
Just a clarification on the parking. So the limits that are there now, that, you know, as they approximate the edge of the wetland, you're not going to extend those any further?
No.
Though maybe further away from the wetlands, you're obviously going to be adding more parking.
Yes, yeah, further outside the buffer zone, we're cutting into the hillside, and yes, we're adding more.
So nothing in the paved area is any closer to the wetland than what's already there now?
Correct.
So in exchange for that, what we're doing is getting LID principles by putting the Filtrex boxes in, tree boxes in, and that's a net improvement over the existing condition, I would say. So that's obviously pretty good. There's one loop that I think is not fully closed. I just want to be clear on it, because I'm reading in a summary versus what you had just said. The Horsley and Witten, on a review of your mounding analysis, has asked for verification of soil conditions and some additional soil sampling to be done.
Correct.
Correct? So if you complete this process with us, say, this evening, and you complete the planning board process soon thereafter, the goal would be to what? Wrap up your design, put contract documents together, and put it out to bid.
Correct.
And when do you see approximately, you know, when that would happen?
We would like to go out, I mean, so planning board wouldn't wrap up and have their final decision until March 19th. It'd be I believe, 20-day appeal period for them. And so you're looking at mid-April. So you're looking at mid to end of mid-April probably when you're going out to bid. and then hopefully construction would start at the end of the school season.
So one of the recommendations could be that this additional test pit soil data gathering by way of confirming mounding analysis be done after the fact. So one is administrative on our perspective. How do we get that reviewed after the fact when we've completed our process? How do we pay our consultant to review it? One. And two, what if the mounding analysis is compromised by a soil condition that this additional sampling proves doesn't support the analysis? We now have contract documents done, maybe on the street, maybe already opened out to bid and opened, and it is a pre-construction condition to do additional soil sampling. What do we accomplish? Coming back with a change order right out of the gate?
Let me just check, maybe help clarify. So they had they requested additional test pits to confirm groundwater within the infiltration areas. And that's somewhat separate from the mounding analysis. It definitely has an impact on that. And their concern there was just to make sure when the soil evaluator is going out and doing the testing, we don't necessarily know, because we don't know where the good soils are, we don't know where the system's going to go, so they weren't able to get exactly right in the infiltration areas. That being said, the groundwater is pretty uniform across the site and across those areas. So what they were requesting is that before we get that we do confirm and do a test pit in those infiltration areas. On top of that, if that is, for instance, if you have 4 feet separation of groundwater table, you don't have to do a mounding analysis. What you're saying is, what if they go back and they do a test pit and it finds out that we're 2 feet separation from groundwater table? Then we have to do a mounding analysis. The mounding analysis that we had to do it for 2 of the infiltration areas, showed that even though we did the mounding analysis as required, that it wasn't an issue because it wasn't mounding into the system, which is what this infiltration. And you are allowed to, and this is just at the peak area, not throughout the whole system. It ended up, at worst case, I believe it was about 6 inches of mounding, and we had 2 feet we could mound. So I'm pretty confident that if we see even a little bit higher groundwater table, that wouldn't be an issue, because even what we did see of the mounding analysis wasn't even close to breaking into the system.
Okay. I'm not going to use the word test, I'm sorry to cut you short, but not to use the word test pit.
Yeah.
What we need to do is verify where the water table is. In a frozen ground condition with fields that are not in use this time of year, with the haste at which we want to get this out to bid, which I understand is something we do want, why can't we just go through and punch a couple borings in these systems where they're supposed to be and get the answer?
Well, the reason I say test pit is because borings don't give you the estimated season high groundwater table. They can give you what the groundwater is at this moment. But the reason we do test pits 8 feet long, 4 feet wide, and down to a depth, ultimately, usually hopefully around 10 to 12 feet, is because you can actually go in and see where there is a rusting line.
Yeah, the modeling.
The modeling, yes.
Yeah.
So.
You can get that with a recovered split spoon, can't you?
Not at the same level in accuracy, because you just don't. A lot of these glacial till soils.
My concern, as it was on day one, is exactly where it still is we have a higher level of confidence of the hydraulic analysis, but the neighbor's concerned and my underlying concern is, will the system work to accept this thing? And that we have a question that's hanging out there that the burden is put on the taxpayers of town, that what if we find this thing and it's already out to bid and we have to go out and reanalyze it? We have no vehicle by which to even require it. An after-the-fact test pit is like saying, let's do an after-the-fact delineation.
We have required confirmatory test pits prior to, we required it on West Mill, we required it at Merrimack Condos. I can name a couple of orders that had confirmatory test pit requirements prior to installation.
I think of private properties with private development who are willing to take those risks on for themselves, but as a taxpayer in town here, like most of my colleagues, I would be concerned with putting a very, very costly project out to bid without having the data. I'm uncomfortable. I guess that's all I can say on that. I think it's a great project. I think all the other things that we've talked about are there. If we had just had the data and had the time to get that data, we wouldn't be having this discussion. I think we would complete the peer review and be certain that the drainage system works. It's what the neighbors implored upon us, and it's what I remembered from when the middle school went in. I haven't lost sight of that. I think we're almost there, and we just need the data.
I'm in agreement with my colleague. The first question I asked, I think you were here at last meeting, was that there was no groundwater that was going to leave the site,
Yes.
right? Because there were no, and I know this area well. I mean, I've lived in town my whole life. It's extremely wet. The water table is extremely high. I know it, you know it, most of the board knows it. So I have an issue with, I want to be absolutely positive, and I'm sure the abutters that come to see us, I know they're concerned about the parking, that's fine, but I think they're more concerned about the groundwater. The parking lot that you are extending, I see a row of, on the backside near the wetlands. Is that where the sidewalk used to be? Or are you going to keep the sidewalk?
There's no sidewalk there.
That's parking now.
There's a sidewalk that runs from that parking
Are
lot.
you talking about the wetland edge?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a walkway there now,
Yes.
and there'll be a walkway there.
So but you can put parking this way, long ways, in that corner? See where it says it's marked wetlands?
Yes.
It looks like there's a row of parking spaces.
Yeah, so they're coming up, there's a pavement there, sorry, there's the walkway, and the parking spaces there'll be a curb, and the parking spaces will go perpendicular to that curb.
Okay, I was just curious if they were eliminating the walk to use those to make those
No,
parking
I mean, we've
spaces.
held the walk, then you have the parking, and then we're able to work over design-wise the
So
whole.
you're gonna go pretty deep into that hill?
Yes, on the right side?
Yeah.
On the left side. of
Left
this-
side,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, to create
additional parking.
yeah, a lot. Because I go there every day, so that's why I know.
Yeah.
I also think it would be worthwhile to have some kind of permanent barrier, given the proximity of that parking area and sidewalk.
I talked to Jen today, I meet with her in the morning. We talked about it, and I talked to the DPW Assistant Director, and I told him our concerns. And one of our concerns was putting a wooden guardrail along that wetlands on this side of the middle school. Wooden guardrail along the whole length.
Along the walkway.
Yes.
That's
And-
not enough. Look, how would you plow that lot? I'll tell you how you plow it.
They put the
Right to
slope.
right to the wetland.
No, they haven't yet.
No, I'm saying, how would you, as proposed, given that you're cutting into the hillside, because that's still going to be, that's going to be a steep slope coming up.
They do
You-
have
On the
some
left-hand side, right?
stockpiling.
Yeah, it would have to go to the north, to the west, and that's where we have our snow stockpiling called out in the plan.
That's
we
where
would
they
require
that's where they put the
signage.
snow now. Right by the gate on Parker Street.
And we would
That's where they
require.
put the snow for that parking
Our
lot.
general requirement
And
would
they
be to
put some
sign
on
that.
island.
It's getting people to do it, it becomes the issue.
Well, they have been up to this point. I don't see them changing their
Okay,
plowing.
fair enough.
I think
They don't, I haven't seen plowing there currently.
well,
on that
I sit
side.
there every day. No, I know, they plow it. They plow along the sidewalk and put the snow up by Parker Street. And there's a big island there. Although it looks like it's being illuminated, but there is
There's, on this, because of the background image, there's trailers there, but those are obviously not going to be there. They're not there
Yeah.
now, and that area would be level for
yeah,
snow
because
storage.
when Tropiano did his water system, they use that area as a stockpile area for
I
the.
think the grass area up here, actually, in here is shown as snow stockpile.
On that
So,
side.
I mean, just as you're gesturing, if you look at the acreage of pavement in the parking lot.
Right. Well, there's
And you look at the
multiple
acreage
areas.
of green area, you are literally talking about a mountain of snow in one storm, never mind multiple storms.
Oh, I mean, it's not.
And so at some point with all that acreage, you're gonna put it
The
wherever it's
snow
easy, you know.
storage, it's not on the
You can go right
conceptuals,
over.
it's in the
Well,
plans, but you can,
the
if you
tree
move
line
up,
is right there.
Jennifer, you were,
So they're not gonna
If you go back to the
pile
plan you were at,
unless they
actually.
pile the snow on the sidewalk.
you,
The sidewalk, there's a sidewalk in the tree line. The tree line is right up against the sidewalk. On
Yeah,
that side.
But what we're saying is, we're considering a waiver, not even a waiver, we're considering letting the parking lot be within the 25-foot, as it is currently now.
Yes.
And extending that additional area further up, away from our wetland area. So, with all that said, we wouldn't allow snow storage anywhere within 25, which means soon as you get off the pavement into that walkway, you're in the 25.
Right.
So if you don't do anything higher than a guardrail, I'm just telling you, we're both in the plowing business.
I
You know
know.
where it's gonna end up.
Well, I know.
Some guy in the middle of the winter, when he's got no other place to put it, is gonna put it in the wetland. That's where it has to go.
That means he has to lift up over the berm, over the sidewalk, over the guardrail,
Yeah, it's not, a simple plow won't be doing that, yeah.
into the tree line. I know, they stockpile the snow right on Parker Street, I know they do.
Yeah.
Because I've seen it there, and I know it's there now. And on this side, they pile the snow up in the two corners, that little green triangle on the right. And
Yeah.
by the building across the way, there's another stockpile.
I just want to be crystal clear. So part of the conversation was O&M plan and refinement of the O&M plan. You know, the town is going to be ultimately responsible. We're not worrying about Demoulas or Stop and Shop or anybody who's got pockets. You know, we're talking about our own town. You know, there may be instances by our own order of conditions that requires this site to be loaded and trucked away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something the town doesn't do routinely.
They do. Yeah, I mean, I do, I shouldn't say it, but I do the high school, and it's designed to haul away with extensive snow.
I just wanna be-
Because
wanna
it's
be
surrounded
clear.
by wetlands.
And which is the situation over in this side, is my point.
Right.
That's my point.
You know, then you touch on another subject, is as far as the maintenance of the stormwater system. Who's gonna the town maintains it.
We will.
That's the problem. They're gonna have to. 'Cause it's
Like
a
any other
sensitive-
MS4 site.
But we're getting off track. Like I said, the Godville, we were interested in. And on the other side,
Okay.
it's part of the town. I already talked to the assistant DPW director. On the other side, somebody's using it as a dump. On the end of all the dead end streets. And one of them, they literally drive a truck in there and dump the brush and so we want that cleaned up, and we also want some boulders to prevent, so that those woods and that wetland stays protected.
Is that, and I don't think the town would have it, you've talked obviously more people than I have at the town. Is that something that's part of this project, or is that a separate enforcement order?
I
that
had recommended that we issue a separate enforcement order
Right.
to
But
require that.
the Godville should be part of this project.
Yeah, that would be
Okay.
part of this project.
And that,
The other side is enforcement, that we will issue
Yeah.
ourselves. But, like I said, as long as you're designed, and you can category on TV and in public say when it's done, isn't gonna be any more water
yeah.
to the abutters than there is now.
And that's what our stormwater report has shown, and that's what Horst and Witten has reviewed, so yes.
Okay. Deb?
How long is it going to take you to get the information, the further information to close this project?
I mean, the test pits, we'd have to look at the infiltration areas, because some of them are in pavement, we're currently under pavement, so we might have to dig up that, cut up that test pit, disturb the existing fields. I mean, it could be done if, I mean, you could, I guess it's a question of whether it can be done or whether it's worth being done. There's frost right now, some frost that we'd have to be broken through, so it wouldn't be an easy dig. It'd be much easier if it was done even obviously later March or early April. But if you have to dig it, I don't know if the town really wants to bring a hammer out to break through the frost in order to do a test pit, but it can be done. And relatively quickly, as long as you get a contractor out there. And we can get a soil evaluator out there without a problem.
Thank you.
Done?
No, I have no questions. So is Horsley and Witten willing, after we close our action and after the planning board closes their action, to do one more pass at reviewing the test put?
We could require
Test
it
pit
as
data.
part of the order of conditions. I mean, if we were to condition their review of the test pit data, I'm sure they would do it. We probably will have some escrow left over. I don't really know.
Yeah. They didn't, I mean, in their review, they didn't have any, they brought up that not all the test pits were, or not all the infiltration had the test pits in them, but they didn't have any questions on the test pit, which were done by a
Well,
certified
Right,
peer
but they
reviewer.
did say that we should condition these
Yes.
additional test pits.
Sure.
And I would say, as a condition, we could require their review of that test pit data.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just bringing up that they didn't have any concerns about the test pit data that was done, just to make that clear. They wanted more, but they didn't necessarily have an issue with any of the groundwater or soil material types that were determined, so.
I mean, they function like a septic system, you just need to have a test pit within the system.
Yes, exactly.
Simple as
Yeah.
that.
And soil-wise, it was a very uniform site. It's a glacial till. It's not the quickest draining, but doesn't take forever either. It's not a silt or clay.
Do we have any butters for this project? Do you want to speak? No. Okay. Historically, we don't approve projects without planning
The
board
planning
decision.
board completing their, what we would do is draft the order of conditions.
We'll draft an order.
And once they decide they have no additional plan changes, then we would try to issue our order simultaneously with theirs. Our appeal period is less than theirs, and
Yeah.
so I would assume we could
Just-
time it pretty
The
right.
reason why we do that is because, like I said, planning board in the last minute can change things. And then we've approved what we see, and it comes back to us totally different. So it's just, we just assume,
I'm not
they
anticipating that.
probably
I
won't
think
change
they'll-
it.
I'm not anticipating that, but, I mean, I don't see that there's harm in
There's no
going
harm
one
in-
more meeting.
right.
Even though they're
Right.
meeting after us, I would assume you would have all, if they were planning to issue a decision on the 19th, you said?
Yeah, because they would, if they close out on Tuesday, and hopefully they are able to, they can't issue a decision until 2 weeks later, because the decision has to be written up, and they have to.
Right, but it would allow us time to coordinate our decision. So even if we issued on the 13th and they issued on the 19th, we'd at least be, we're March 13th, so.
Is there any more questions by the commission? No? I see none. Okay, so we're going to continue to the next meeting?
So moved.
Second?
Just before, so are we clear that the commission wants to have those test pits done before the next meeting? Is that what they're?
I got that you wanted me to require that the test pitting be done prior to,
No, I think my little diatribe here was to point out the risk that we're about to embark upon. If the applicant is requesting to make it a condition, then it's a condition. And then at that point, I just want to be concerned that whatever comes out of that may result in reopening a hearing.
Okay.
That's the end result. So
and
I
then
have
get
no problem.
reviewed by Horsley Witten
Yeah.
once it's submitted.
Yeah, and then they got the underlying concern that, if that in fact happens, it's a risk, but if it does happen, we are in the midst of a bidding process that
Might
could
change.
foul things up. So I'm not sure if we want to put a deadline on that condition, but we can talk about that as we deliberate the
Right.
orders.
But other conditions would be the permanent barrier along the walkway.
Yes.
Signage. Okay.
You'd be looking at a wooden guardrail, I anticipate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Typical.
If,
And no snows.
And no snow- no
and
snow.
those-
Along the whole
That'll
edge.
be all in the part of the decision.
And those sort of notations made within the O&M plan.
Have they provided an O&M plan?
Yep.
Yeah, that's all
I-
standards.
The tree filter boxes, are you using Filtrex?
I believe so, yes, yeah.
Okay, so they have their own O&M schedule of revitalizing the mulch.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion to continue. You?
I have Deb and Joe
Okay,
motioned and
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
And that's,
Thank you, thank you,
The
that's
13th.
13th. Okay, all right. Thank you, Commission.
thank you. Next one is 242-1751 Oak Street.
So I think you'll find in the OCAV filing that there's a lot of photos and documentation of existing conditions out there. Do you want me just to pull up the plans to start?
Go ahead.
All set?
Yep, well said.
Okay. For the record, I'm Mary Rimmer, Rimmer Environmental Consulting. I'm representing Dorothy Held, who's the applicant here in the back, and Thad Berry from ASB Design is a project engineer. And this is for work in the area of 1 Oak Avenue, which is at the corner of Chestnut Street and Oak, as you are heading at the corner there is that the property that the trustees own that has the meadow that they maintain, if you're familiar with that area. Underneath Oak Ave, which is a private way, is an 8-inch culvert that's compromised. It's clogged. The head wall is in disrepair, and it's causing the stream that it conveys to overtop and cause flooding on the road and on Ms. Held's property as well. So this project incorporates a couple of different elements. One is to clean out the culvert, to saw cut the ends and put in new flared sections, rebuild the stone dry laid head walls, and then regrade the area at the outlet to improve the flow into the meadow. And that's at the corner there. And there's also a 12-inch culvert that's not shown, or it's shown on the top left of the plan there, where it exits underneath Chestnut Street there. But what happens is, in order to maintain positive flow in that culvert, we need to lower the outlet elevation. You mean Andover Street? Did I say Chestnut? Yes. Andover Street, yes. To lower the elevation, so that will require a temporary alteration of about 672 square feet of bordering vegetated wetland. So we anticipate that top material, the sod, essentially, be set aside and replaced, and the area restored upon completion and reseeded with wetland seed mix as needed. So there's temporary impact directly to the wetland to do this work, but it, like I said, would be temporary. It's all herbaceous vegetation. There's no shrubs or trees in that area at all. And then, in addition, in the area behind One Oak Avenue, there's flow which comes from the sort of right side of the plan to the left, and that is causing flooding within the basement of the property there. So they're proposing to regrade the backyard to improve positive drainage into that wetland area in the direction that you see the grading. That requires a small amount of grading within the 25-foot no disturb zone, which would also be restored. There's a stone wall along the property line that would need to be dismantled and replaced upon the completion of the work. But again, these areas are open. There's not a lot of woody vegetation at all. There's a shed that's proposed to be installed in the back. Are you keeping the little shed that's there now?
No, that was removed.
Okay, so the shed that's there would be taken out and a new shed proposed. And then lastly, there's some drainage improvements and a pervious walkway at the front of the house, and some improvements to improve the flow along Oak Avenue so it bypasses the front yard and front step and continues on towards the outlet of the culvert.
Pretty good understanding of what you're requesting. Really, it's really just a drainage improvement just for self-preservation, to get the water around the house and not into the basement.
Water, exactly, and off the road as much as possible.
So you've got, it's all temporary alteration?
Correct.
Talk about the 12-inch pipe that's up in the upper left-hand corner. That's what you were talking about. Are you talking about lowering the inlet out?
Not doing anything with that at all.
Which pipe were the 12-inch that you were referring to?
That's the 12-inch pipe that is existing, we're not touching.
Not touching that?
Not
okay.
touching that.
You were just using
Just
that as a point of reference of
The
where the
direction
water
of
has to
flow,
go
where
to.
it goes eventually, where after it leaves this wet meadow, it drains towards that culvert and under Andover Street.
Okay. So to accomplish that, is this work of the temporary disturbance of the hatched area that you have to get low enough to get into that?
That's the,
Or
yes.
get higher enough to get into that?
Correct. That's where the temporary disturbance is. So you'd see the erosion control barrier that would be at the limit of work there, that would be installed at the beginning of construction. And then once you have full vegetative cover reestablished, then we take that out. And it's just a minor lowering of the elevations in that area.
So Mary, this may be a question, but this is Thad, right?
This is that, yep.
It is. The 8-inch culvert that's there now, you're going to be putting 8-inch back? Or just improving? You're just really improving the inlet and outlet from it, right?
Yeah.
It's just an inlet outlet improvement, yeah.
So
Not
do you-
taking the pipe out, not replacing the pipe.
Not replacing it also. I mean, are we concerned at all with, does the road overtop, or is it just an obstruction within the pipe?
The inlet gets really, basically gets really clogged. And what we're hoping is by kind of saw kind of pipe, putting in a nice defined wall, that if this maintains spring and fall, it's not gonna get clogged up. That's really, when I was out there, you couldn't even see the pipe, it was sticks and leaves and, nothing that's really hard to clean. It just has to be done on a yearly basis. Once
Okay.
that's opened up, it flows.
Okay, okay. I'm all set, I have no other questions.
You know, the plan makes it look like you dig in about 1,000 feet, you know.
I know,
You know
the
what I'm
scale,
saying? I mean,
yeah.
I know where this house is.
Yeah,
Um,
it's small.
It's small, and it's close to Andover Street. The question I have, you checked that pipe that goes under the road, it's not collapsed at all?
No, no.
Okay. 'Cause pardon me?
It's a rather small pipe, diameter pipe.
Yeah,
Should
but,
be a minimum 12-inch.
Private way.
no, the pipe that they want to change is the one that goes on the Andover Street.
No,
The one
Not
to the
changing any
ends.
pipes.
The one to the ends.
We're going to work with the pipes that are there. So the culvert under Oak Ave will stay. It'll just be saw cut on the ends, and they'll work on the ends.
Right. You
Yep.
have, and you have permission from the trustees on both sides?
Yeah.
We do. They actually are in favor of the project and whatever needs to be done.
I'm very familiar with this area. It's very, very wet, including the outfield of Drummond Playground.
The ball field, yeah, it's in the back corner, right?
Yeah. No, I think it's a good project, and I don't understand why you don't want to go swimming in the cellar.
Yeah, I'm just moved here, so I've just learned how marshy North Andover is, and I actually went to the historical society to see what I could get in terms of the historical use of the property, because there's a lot of swales and so forth, and they're like, we've tried and we haven't found out, so at some point, just out of curiosity, I might dig through the deeds, but, my hope is really that this project would improve the property overall for everyone.
Just be careful what you wish for.
Oh, yeah.
There's another element that is being requested that's not in the notice of intent is some invasive species removal along Oak Avenue. And so there's a small lot, the parking lot, that goes with the One Oak Ave lot directly across the street, right next to the stream there. And there's a lot of bittersweet and multiflora rose and buckthorn and all the non-natives along that edge, and then further towards Andover Street in front of the trustees' property there as well. She'd like to have permission to, over time, remove that and replant with native plantings. So,
That's unrelated to this project.
No, it's
no,
not
she's asking that to have
'Cause
that
it's
be
in the
part of
buffer
this
zone,
project.
so-
Yeah.
It would need approval.
So the thing that and it's a great, great gesture, and I understand the importance of it, but I think you also understand that we gotta be real careful of how that's done, especially the transport of any of the waste
Right,
material, and where
right.
it's disposed of and how it's disposed of.
Sure.
Don't wanna proliferate,
Right.
spreading of it. So we got, as much as I would encourage it, I think that we would encourage the landowner to work with our agent to devise a plan of, outside of this process. Maybe it's just a demonstration project we could
Just
allow to have
through a
happen.
letter agreement or something?
Well, I would think if Mary could provide sort of the protocol for doing the work, kind of a standardized, how it might happen. I mean, they're only going to have 3 years unless they want to extend the order to do the work. And that, just anytime it was to be worked on, that there's maybe a list of natives that were
Sure.
proposed and a methodology for removing the invasives.
I don't want to hold up the drainage work with the invasives work, but if it's something you can make it a condition that I provide you with additional information that's satisfactory, I can do it that way, or I can submit a separate RDA.
Might be an ongoing perpetual condition for invasive control, so long as the landowner work with the department in devising a plan that makes sense at that time.
Mm-hmm.
Who is the landowner for that?
It's the trustees of resolutions.
Also, part of my
And-
property is well.
In front of your property, the small parking lot there.
As far as her property is, you can put that on, with this, you can put this with this application, the removal of invasives on her property.
And the trustees' property, they were okay with that as well. Yep.
Right. We'd have to discuss that further. The main thing is the drainage pipe, which I haven't.
I think there's a butters if you want to, if there's any butter comments.
Do you have any butters for this project? Good, would you please come up to this table?
Sure.
Or either the table
Table, yeah,
or the
wherever
podium.
you're more comfortable.
Hi, I'm Mary DeSalt. I'm at 5 Oak Ave, Dorothy's neighbor. And this is the first we'd seen these plans. I haven't had, we have very alternate schedules. I just haven't had a chance, so I'm asking questions here. Oh, and first of all, we're all for cleaning out that culvert. When we say yearly maintenance, are you taking that on? Because it doesn't, it's not your, seems it ought to be somebody else's responsibility than yours, or
Well,
it's the.
I am, put it this way, right now, doing nothing that's causing erosion and it's
Right.
deteriorating the equity of my property, for lack of a better word. So, I think someone said it's self-preservation, was that the word it used?
That's what I used.
think that is
Yeah.
a good word for it. And so I haven't dealt with that yet, but, I've got 3 years and I will extend it if I need to. I mean, my hope is that I can resolve the problem so I can make this my home. I've been there since May of 2000 or June, I forgot, somewhere, almost 2 years, not quite.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Maintenance
anyway.
could be perpetual.
From what I've seen, as was proposed, actually simplifies that effort. It sounds like it's a big burden, but the reality is by putting these curvature head walls on either end, it's a raking operation.
Yeah.
Make sure no leaves and
Yeah.
twigs fall on it.
Yeah,
Just
I
clean
mean,
it up here.
the leaves in there are terrible.
That's all it really
It's
is,
terrible.
right?
Yeah, if you do it spring and fall, it's a very simple process. If you wait 2 or 3 years, it becomes a bigger.
Sure.
So if you do it spring and fall, it's not going to take very much effort.
Yeah. So,
Actually, the applicant wanted to add to it.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but this does relate to the invasive. There's an enormous amount of knotweed that's growing up around the inlet of the culvert, so it's not an aesthetic request. The invasives themselves are causing problems with that culvert, and I happen to own the inlet, lucky me. I thought it was someone else's problem. So that is in part where that request is coming from, that's just to put that into context, okay, context.
Do you have people talking to microphones for the sake of the recording? You can't hear any of this
Oh, yeah, the
stuff.
people in the audience, you do need to come up to respond. Us at the table at the podium, they have microphones, but they're not picking you up, man.
All right, do you need me to?
No, I don't think you have.
I can restate it to save you the trip. So the applicant responded is that because of the growth of knotweed on the inlet side, that your control of that invasives on that side actually helps with that maintenance question, and that's why it is she asked for that. Did I get that right?
I'm sure you do.
so I do have a question about the invasive control, but I was going to hang on to that for a second, because it sounded like, well, I'll just go into that, because it sounded like that was also further down towards Andover Street. I heard you say that whole strip.
No, and
for-
at her parking area, where she owns that piece of the parking area. So it would be there, across the street from her house.
Right, so not further down, where the goes. All the way out to Andover Street along the west side there. And if you wanted to continue out and continue on in that effort in front of that trustee's lot, the wood lot there, that's something that she has suggest it as an option.
I've expressed interest because just.
You
Come on
have to
up here.
come to the mic.
Exactly.
Thank you. I've expressed interest in doing what I can to help restore that property to its natural state. The bittersweet, and honestly, I'm not an expert I've just learned what knocksweed was last, but it's clear that left to its own devices, even if we clean this up a little bit, it's already overwhelming the property, which means that we may be back here to base one because the invasives will have caused, this will be a recurring problem without dealing with it on the outset. So that's the intent here. It's not a big aesthetic improvement that I'm seeking. I'm trying to restore the natural state so everything functions as it should. But this is not my wheelhouse, which is why I have Mary here. She gets this, and so I'll leave it at that.
What I'm wrestling with, ma'am, is that because of your willingness to express that, I'm not sure if you understand the burden you might be taking on if we require it. It's a knotweed will grow through pavement.
I would suggest that if we do address this through the order of conditions, that it just be that any invasive species control be subject to further information being submitted.
That's my preference, because I think it leaves that option open.
I don't want to leave it wide open, right? So if it's proposed to be conducted, that it be conducted under the guidance of the Conservation Administrator.
Great, because I think the applicant doesn't realize what she's going to get herself into.
If we require it. Leave it to your
I'll
option.
accept that, you're doing me a favor.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I just wanted, so my question was also to have, if it's really that whole area, that the abutters have some input on that too.
Sure.
That's all. Okay, so that's that question. And then my other question was, I couldn't tell exactly where the 672 feet that's being lowered is and what that
It's directly at the outlet end of that culvert. There's a culvert under Oak Avenue, just to the left of
so is it that shaded area there?
So it's that shaded area right there.
Ah,
That's that area.
okay, so you're trying to
Get the water
make
to-
way for more water.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay. All right, that makes sense, okay.
And there's some grading in her backyard as well.
And that's a minuscule change in grade.
Right.
It's really just to break the bubble, just to get the water to flow.
Flow, right, got it. And then my question on the back, you're suggesting that the grading change will make the water flow in what direction? Can
Towards
you
the
move
wetland.
that? In what
Yes.
direction?
We slide
I
this-
can slide that down a little bit. There we go.
So to the north, towards Andover Street.
So it comes out of the shaded area, it works its way to the upper
No,
left.
It's around the backyard, it's coming from over by where the shed is proposed, and it's
Yeah.
going to flow into the wetland.
That's the direction it normally wants to go in, except
Right.
right now, it's just ponding in the backyard and in the basement, instead of continuing on where
Right.
it needs to go.
Right.
So
Because
that-
typically,
so
there's
that-
always been a swale that goes across all three, 1, 3, and
Right.
5 Oak Ave, I mean, historically.
Yeah,
Uh,
but someone's
but-
redone the swale between the two houses. So your house, the middle house, and the middle house has redesigned that swale, and that water is pitching now into my yard, just for the record.
So there'll have to be some material, some loam brought in to help change the grades and get that brought
Right,
in the correct direction.
okay.
So make sure I understood what you just said. By regrading the area out where the shed is and behind your in your backyard, behind the home, you're actually removing an impediment to the flow. So you're actually going to make it flow better.
That's right.
So the upstream concerns that might be being voiced you're actually relieving those.
Right.
Yeah, we're basically lowering her backyard to assist the water to flow. Basically, we're taking a very level area, making it steeper, so everything just flows downhill.
And that'll be lawn areas, that just gets
It's
mowed in the
gonna-
future. Yeah, so
And
Right.
we've graded it in a very wide swale, so we don't want to have a very defined one.
When you're
We want
mowing,
it
you
to
just
have
gotta
it-
feel this little
Yeah.
dip. That's all you
Right,
gotta
you just
feel.
want it to flow off, sheet flow.
Yep. Those are just my questions. That's it. Yep, thanks.
Someone did ask who owns the culvert. I don't have an answer to that question.
The town does.
No,
The town
No.
does?
it's not an accepted
Private way?
street.
Everybody who has rights in the way owns everything in the way, chances are.
Oh, yeah.
Good luck doing the deep research on that.
So we can help you clean it every year.
Sweep it out.
Yeah. Oh, that's a different one. This was the one that we're about.
Deb? Doug?
My only comment regarding that 8-inch pipe is, if you're doing all this work, I would increase the size of the pipe to at least 12 inches. That'll make less chance of it getting clogged. The larger the pipe. That's your business.
Yeah, that sounds.
That's and I actually had the same concern, that's why I asked, is the road over top now? It's exactly why I asked that, because we have a careful balance here of not increasing the velocity or any flow rate onto this property or through the wetland area, so we really almost gotta keep the hydraulic condition the same, yet allow them to maintain it. If we make it bigger, you increase the flows, you might
Well,
cause.
technically, you could get more flow through it, but
It's a hell of a burden for a single
Is the same, so you're not
landowner,
gonna
I don't think I wouldn't
quicker
go
through
there.
it.
But I understand, from a maintenance perspective, it's gonna be less inclined to pluck.
I just want to say, we've been there the longest on the street, and the situation that's in those pictures is very, very rare. It's happened lately because it's so clogged up. But that clogged up condition is within the past few years. So I really think the clearing it out, I don't think
What
you
is
do need a
clogged?
bigger pipe.
What is clogged?
There's just piles of leaves through this area that's kind of a occasional stream, a temporary stream, that from
Is the pipe clogged or is the inlet clogged?
the inlet's clogged,
And the outlet is clogged as well?
yes,
So no one's bothering to clean it out?
Correct.
On a regular basis?
that is correct.
That's
It's
because-
never been
That
cleaned.
was your concern.
It's never been cleaned as far as I know, in the.
Well, this is how this all started. I ordered Goats to Go to come in and clean up the invasives, and I'm sorry, it's funny now. At the time, it was terrible, but that's how this whole conversation, because I was attempting to go, and I learned that it was wetlands and I could not disturb it, and henceforth, we are here now. And I agree with you, but then I've been documenting every rainstorm and snowstorm with my camera, so I can demonstrate that this problem is ongoing and that it's gotten worse, but it is not irregular. So I have the documentation over the time that I have lived there showing that this water problem is very real.
We don't have the time to dive into it, but if you look at the history of town, when this was a farming area, heading up towards the school,
Yes.
I mean, there are so many shallow agricultural drain tiles, that whole area is just laced with them. They move water, and nobody knows where they are. They're on private property, they're under roadways, they're everywhere. This might be the remnant of one of those, who knows?
Yeah, there's actually where the shed is, there is one, it's like a brown ceramic type of pipe thing, and I don't know what it's from or what it's,
So
you know.
the trick in this neighborhood is just to move the water as efficiently as you can and maintain that flow over time. That's really all it boils down to. It's not to take anything away from Thad, but there's not a hell of a lot to design here.
We're trying to keep it simple, keep it easy,
Yeah.
within budget.
Okay. So we need a motion to approve Warren Street.
Approve the waivers.
Oh, we have to approve the waivers.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous.
And then it would to be close an issue in 21 days.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, and that's unanimous. You're all set.
You're set.
Thank you, gentlemen. Anything else?
30-second recess?
Yes.
Please.
242-1751, 2051 Salem Street.
Good evening, Ben Osgood Jr., Ranger Engineering. Here for 2051 Salem Street. I have the owners here, Cleon Richards and Lee Richards. They actually, Cleon lives at 2053 Salem Street, which is also on the agenda tonight. What we've done here is they've created a new 1-acre lot. It's on the south side of Salem Street. It's out just before the power lines, as you get way out before Sharpness Pond Road. We're here tonight because we are crossing the riverfront zone to get into the back portion of the lot. There are no wetland resource areas on the property. It fronts on Salem Street, as I said. It rises up from Salem Street, elevation 90, all the way in the back to elevation 136, I believe, 130. And we're proposing a septic system, a well, and a house, with the driveway, like I said, crossing the riverfront zone. The river, if you look on the small area map on sheet 1, is actually Boston Brook. It's across the street. This, if you're familiar with that area as you head out, there are no houses on the left side of the road until you get to one lone house that's been there for years. They have goats. That's the house that's directly across the street. So the river kind of bulges out around their property, right opposite where our property is. As I said, we're crossing the riverfront. We have, I believe, a total area of 8,550 square feet within the river zone. We're disturbing 4,000 square feet, so we're under the 10%, 5,000 square foot threshold. We propose the erosion control, the construction entrance, and all the appropriate protections to prevent any construction period erosion into the river. We did also apply to Natural Heritage, and we received an approval, or I guess a notice of no take for this project that was issued, I guess earlier this week or late last week. And I think, Jennifer, you have a copy of that, right?
I did. It talks about not segmenting the project or doing work on different parts of that former lot that would cause them to be concerned, which I did send them a copy of the enforcement order, so they would be aware of work being proposed on different parts of the lot, but we can discuss that later.
Right.
But they did issue a note. I guess what needs to be clear, too, is that their no-take was crystal clear that the limits shown of clearing on this lot are the limits of clearing on this lot, that there shouldn't be any extension beyond that limit of clearing without letting them know.
Correct.
To Habitat Landings?
I would assume it was for, they required a restriction on the adjacent property, the 3-lot subdivision that's to the right of this. So there are vernal pools on that property, but I'm sure there's just some portion of the habitat. Again, they didn't say, they just said that there was to be no disturbance beyond the limit proposed here and no segmentation of the work on adjacent lots.
My guess is the species I mentioned is because of the forested area, they want to keep that with
intact to some extent.
Exactly.
Right.
So we're going to hang ahead on the Natural Heritage determination of take, even though we haven't done the mapping of those vernal pools. We know how the habitat works, and I'm going to agree with that.
Right. There are no vernal pools here.
On this lot.
On this lot. This lot was split out of a 14-acre lot. There's 11 acres left.
Just shown in front of it.
It's up kind of towards the left. And it goes way out in the back. It actually abuts those 3 lots that Jennifer's speaking of. There is a large wetland system up in that area that drains down through the adjacent property and crosses the street. But for now, we've just divided the 1 lot and proposing the 1 house. So I think that's essentially what we have. At this point, I think I received 1 comment from the town engineer about the driveway. that we need to take care of on the plans. You forwarded that to me today, Jennifer. We also have some issues, minor plan revisions we need to make for the Board of Health. So what I would like to do is request a continuance to the next meeting to be able to submit revised plans to the Board of Health and to the Commission so that they all match and they're approving the same plan date.
A couple other comments that I mentioned to the commission. I think some interim erosion controls, given the slope on the site, and of stockpile area. There are some more level portions of the site where that might be appropriate versus some of the steeper areas.
Yep.
So, those two
I'm not
things.
sure if your conversations with DPW included this point, but I'm looking at the driveway entrance, which is right where they were talking about. It's all country drainage out there, so I'm not sure if there's a swale on the roadside, so they probably want a driveway culvert.
They don't want a
Culvert pipe?
culvert. They have a
Driveway pipe.
They have a condition where the driveway has to slope down 4 inches from the road and then slope back up. I hate that because it's just going to fill with water in the wintertime.
Create the icing condition as you're trying to break.
Right.
That's why I was recommending that they pitch it. The other two lots to the right all have driveways that pitch into a swale that then runs down and into the edge of the roadway. The 3-lot subdivision, there's 2 3-lot subdivisions to the right of this. All of them have driveways that go up that slope. All of them have driveways that pitch into a stone swale
Right.
with check dams. And
Well, that'd be, you wouldn't want the water to run straight down the driveway.
Right, yeah, so we're going to make that adjustment. We'll figure that out. I don't recall, I was out there last week in his snowbank, so I'm not sure what the ditch condition is beyond this, but we'll create something. I mean, the property owner next
The
door.
recollection is just country drainage all the way down to the power lines.
Right,
Just
pretty much.
Just have the driveway break off
Yep.
to the...
So we're going to make that change on the plan. That's one of the issues that we got to deal with, so.
Any other questions, Joe?
You're almost set.
Yeah, I don't have any questions right now. Doug? All right, motion to continue?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Could I ask that, since there's not really a crowd, if we could just do the 2053? I mean, these are the same people involved with that.
The enforcement order?
It's the enforcement order, right? Rather than having them wade through everything.
You have that handy, Jen?
I think Amy Lynch from Mass DOT is our only other applicant here, so I don't know how she feels about that, but
I don't think this is gonna take long.
I don't think it'll take long either.
Right.
You should have a copy of the enforcement order in your packet as well. So I knew this project was coming in front of us, and we just happened to be driving out to another site when we passed, and I actually thought that that was the lot when I first got there, just because I hadn't yet reviewed the plans, and after speaking to Ben, well, I guess we did realize it was the lot to the right, so it is partially on 2051 and partially on 2053 Salem Street that the work occurred. It appears. I mean, there's no property line in the field. The whole entire property had been flagged. I don't know if you said
Right.
you didn't do that, but someone had flagged it, so it was apparent that the work was right up to the edge of the flagged BVW. And the river comes much closer on the other side of this house, so it's clearly within the first 100 feet of the riverfront area as well, or more than likely within the first 100 feet. That said, I don't know if you want to
Right.
go from there with what you think you can,
Yeah,
how you
so
want to handle this.
the wetlands was flagged in association with the Form A plan, which was done by Andover Consulting. I don't know who flagged it. It's not noted on their plan that they filed at the registry. I will try to find that out. But the flags are there. They're still there for the most part. If you're looking at my plan, we show the adjacent house right there to the left. That's I guess that was Cleon's mother's house?
Correct.
Right. So Cleon lives next door at 2053, which is the next house down the street. His mother lived in this house, and she's since passed away, and so now Lee is going to renovate and live in the existing house there. So as part of the Form A plan, they delineated a wetlands. So there is a little bit of a wetland ditch that comes up next to the driveway that services this house. I don't show it on our plan. We didn't survey that far. And we had these plans submitted before anything was cut. But there are quite a few very large pines that they wanted to take down around this house. They haven't been taken down yet. And some large oaks that are on 2053 that they wanted to take down. And they went in and proceeded to take them down without filing with the commission. So I think a very small portion of the wetlands may have been disturbed. It was just right along next to the driveway. It's the roadside ditch. It's all probably was mowed at one time. It just hadn't been maintained over the years. My recollection is there wasn't a lot of valuable wetland vegetation in there, but it was wetland nevertheless.
So is it isolated, or does it connect to that gradient
Connects to
channel?
connects to that big wetland up in the back I spoke about. It comes down right along next to the driveway for 2053. It was a dug ditch, basically. You could see it was, historically done. I think that house was built in you said the 60s?
44 years ago.
His house was built 44 years ago. It's been there a long time. And there's a ditch along the driveway that took the drainage that obviously flowed down through there at the time and just brings it down to a culvert under the road. Little portion of that extends up towards this house, and that's what got disturbed. I mean, I can't imagine it's any more than 50 or 100 square feet that they actually disturbed. But it,
Plus the 25-foot no disturb zone to the
right,
wetland.
right. So, and speaking to Jen today, and I agreed, this is what I had told the owners, that we're going to have to come up with a plan, do a survey, catalog what's been cut, and propose a replacement plan for that, and restore the area. They stopped work. They had cut down a bunch of trees. They had piled the butts up, for somebody to come pick up with a log truck. There's just some, all the tops of the trees are still where they were. They hadn't gathered them up, cut them, and chipped them, so everything is still as it is.
Nothing stumped.
Nothing stumped, no, it was just cutting, and so there was no grubbing done. So I guess the first part of the plan would be to put in some erosion control, a filter sock around the edge of any disturbance, and then take out what has been cut and just get it out of there, and then we'll come back in the spring and restore the area. So, come in with a plan to the commission for approval.
So if you want, we could amend the enforcement order that I issued to, I don't know, what date would you want to have the plan in by?
I mean, we talked about having it approved by May 1st. I don't have a problem with that, and then...
So restoration plan by May 1st, allow them to remove the logs under frozen conditions and install erosion controls.
Right.
With work to be conducted by June 30th, restoration work, or?
Yep.
So if you want to issue that amended EO, I can issue that.
We only have two questions. So Natural Heritage was involved next door. Does this
I will notify.
I already notified them. When they sent me the letter, I said, oops, there's been some disturbance, and
Yeah.
she said, just send it along.
Yeah.
She said she would notify the reviewer, but if you want to get in touch to see if there's
Yeah.
anything that they require.
Question one and question two, did you do the logging yourself, or do you have someone else come in and do it?
There was someone else came to do
So,
it.
is it,
We weren't aware, again, that
So we've had a couple of notorious
It
non-compliers.
wasn't anyone we knew. He did, the
We
logger
have to
did
go after
call
them.
me.
They should have known better.
The logger did call me. Guess what? He's from New Hampshire. So, you know.
Come on, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm from New
No,
Hampshire now.
no.
No, you're not.
I
You
think
are now.
the knowledge of the wetland laws become a little less, you know, common.
No, my
whether you're
point is,
blue.
I mean, amongst us, we know what it is. We have a couple of people who've just been running
Yeah.
roughhouse here.
Yeah.
And like
They
the
don't
old
care.
days.
They
you know,
don't care.
They know better. They
Well,
should
he
know to put
actually,
your
he
client in
called to
dismiss.
say, he called to ask why he couldn't continue, and I had to explain to him why he
All right,
couldn't continue.
Once we make the restoration or whatever, is it possible to get a permit to be able to cut the remaining large trees that
Yeah.
are encroaching?
I think part of that permit, part of the enforcement order is to ask you to file something you're going to request for what it is you want.
Right.
We might say no, but you're gonna ask, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so, I mean, Lee does want to renovate the house. It's an existing house, there's a limit of disturbance. He has a septic system, his grandmother lived there for a long time. He's got,
It might.
it might pass Title V, no, but it's got very little use. I mean, I'll tell you, the sand, we found out here is all sand, down at the bottom of this slope, and it's just, it all ledge, and then where it flattens out along where the river is, all sand. And I suspect that septic system probably works fine for one little old lady, and it would pass, but you move in a family and you may have trouble, so.
Three-bedroom?
I think it's an existing two-bedroom, so,
Your job.
right. So,
For any additional work they could file.
right, so
Once
we're
you have a
gonna come
delineation
back
of
in
the site plan.
and file and for that.
Clean up first.
Right, we'll get this cleaned up, and then we'll come in right after that with a filing for the additional stuff he wants to do.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I just have a comment. Ben,
Yes?
all wetland is valuable.
Well, I know, and I didn't mean to
Okay,
minimize that.
All wetland is valuable.
And I said it didn't have valuable vegetation. I thought the vegetation
Okay.
wasn't real valuable,
Okay,
but
well, just,
we'll
you know, just
restore
to
it
let
with-
you know.
Right.
Okay, so get that out of your mind.
Right. And I didn't mean, I was kind of walking a line there, and I know,
Yeah.
I didn't want to say it wasn't
Yeah.
valuable, but
But
it
you
could be
did.
improved. It could be improved,
Okay.
so.
Steph's awake tonight.
All right. Thank you.
Questions? Motion?
So it would be to amend the enforcement order as you described.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed and unanimous. Okay, thank you. So he knows, he get the paperwork from, the dates you'll get from Jen.
I'll get the paperwork out and send a copy to you and Ben, so that everybody's on the same page. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, they've been very cooperative. We didn't have any issues. They stopped right away and called me right up.
If you looked at the site, there's pine trees around 2051 that have to be, if they're not 100 feet, and this round, like right next to the house. And on Dad's house, the hill on the right side of it coming in, there's oaks that are literally reaching for the sun right, almost over
Right
his
over the
house, so.
house.
Were they still there this morning?
One of them is not, one of them snapped
One of them snapped,
Monday
one of the
night.
big pines did snap halfway up, so it was like, good lord, you know? But Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So we have some continuances. We have 242-1382, request to continue to March 13th.
So, second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. And 242-1655, request to continue to June 13th.
Second.
Why don't you skip 492 Sutton and move on to
Yeah, because that,
Interstate 495?
all right, we'll do that. That's DOT.
Pass them out.
Thanks. Yeah, you can just give, they may actually have, I don't know what was
Yeah, I
printed for
saw
them.
one.
Do you
I saw
have
one. I thought-
8.5 by 11?
This one.
Yeah, we may have actually, Jamie may have printed them for them. I'll take a couple copies though.
These
so-
ones came out a little better than
Oh, yeah, oh, right, then we're
Usually I
just
do
trying to,
this morning, so.
yeah, Ben and I were struggling to read some of the typeset on these when,
Oh, some of it's still pretty tiny, but,
your additional
Yeah.
information for them? Is there a little more?
So I was able to go out and got some GPS spot grades and everything for both of these projects to confirm that it was built as designed. So I guess we could start with the older project first on Holt Road. So I focused on the culvert there, and the location's correct. The length and the slope all match up to design. Sorry, yeah, it's on the aerial. I was, it's the only way I was able to show the points, but
So we,
Yes.
just in our trying to read, did you find any discrepancies between the invert and the outlet elevations? Because as
the elevations are off a little bit, and I'm
Okay,
not
so
sure
it's not-
100% if that, I don't know what datum they used on the original plan.
That's right.
So they're both like exactly like 1.5 feet off. So, and like I said, the slope and length match up to the design plan, so, yeah, it's hard to say. The elevation difference comes from, yeah.
Slope and elevation are, not the elevation, slope and length are the same.
Yeah.
And if the
And the
inverts on either end are equally off the same, it's probably a dated thing like you
Yeah,
suggest.
and the locations are the same.
And there's no ponding of water on the upstream side. No,
No, it's flowing very well. It didn't need
And it's
clean
not eroding on
out.
the downstream side, so
No,
it's probably a datum thing.
yeah. So, and there's a couple other points, just as a reference, those are in the correct locations as well. Manhole.
we couldn't find the drain manhole detail on the proposed plans, right? Is that the case? But we were able to confirm, just as Amy just said, that the 1.5 feet is about 1.5 to 2 feet, plus or minus. Consistent on both ends, so it isn't like one end was off by 2 and the other was spot
Yeah.
on. I mean,
And there is a certain amount with the GPS unit. I was using, it can be, I think it was a 6-inch error on the elevation side.
and I mean, as all the photos, I think that were submitted last time and the ones that we took when we were out there, there's no bank scour, no, no concerns. I don't think we've ever seen any flooding. I mean, 492 just got, 1492 across the street just got redeveloped. They're not experiencing any issues with that culvert. I mean, everything was
exactly what I was gonna ask, is
moving through quite well when we were out there.
In fact, their design was kind of even looking to use this as their
Yep.
conveyance for overflow, right?
They have some rain gardens and things that would overflow
Yeah.
potentially, yeah.
Any questions, Joe?
None?
Deb? Doug? No questions? Motion?
So it's to issue a full and final COC.
Yes.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, and that's unanimous. Next one is 242-1632. Phone number 5, last two. And this one, we have a stamped engineered plan.
This one, more recent, so I was able to use the plans to add the grades onto. Sorry. The grades on here, there is a few discrepancies, give or take, like maybe 6 inches. But for the most part, everything, like the depth of the basin and the general grading matches up. And well, for this one that's on the screen right now, was it, I forget which one, 2 or, I think it's basin 2. The inlets and outlets were existing too, so it should function essentially the same as it.
This removed a paved swale, right?
Yes.
Created
Yeah,
just
the
a-
long one down through there was paved, and it added the, basin for detention and infiltration before.
I don't know what just happened.
Outletting, so.
Oh, now we don't know what's happening. Photos. There we go. Okay.
I hope it's readable enough. I was fighting with AutoCAD for a while there.
Did you have any questions about what the grades?
No, we were able to read it pretty well.
Yeah,
Mostly
and-
the other one that was.
I mean, again, plus or minus, I mean, when we went
Yeah,
out to the site, all the check dams were in the swale. Everything appeared to be functioning. There was no scouring. Everything
Yeah.
was permanently stabilized. Erosion controls had been removed.
Yeah, every
Trees-
time I've been out there, I haven't noticed any drainage issues.
Right. Yep. And like she said, the inlets and outlets remained the same. It wasn't like they changed any of the inputs. It was just more of a
treatment.
Right,
sort of.
providing more storage and slowing things down and providing a little capacity to treat the stormwater. The second project, I don't think was within jurisdiction, was it? The other side of the,
It's a good.
I think it was
Was
out.
that the same question? I think I'm confusing it with the sewer, the Interceptor sewer project.
Yeah, I think this
Further-
one
that's
was.
further down.
This was in the middle of the on-ramp and off-ramp.
The riverfront line should be on there.
Yeah, it is.
It's outside of the riverfront, was
Okay.
my remembrance of this, because we
So-
didn't spend any time reviewing the other side of the street when I was on the project, so.
I forgot about that fact.
Bank.
Yeah. I know you can't see it, but that's mostly because of the grading. You
Yeah,
can't
well,
see
I mean, the other project was mostly on the other side of the bank too, but
Yeah.
I thought on this project it was particularly far away.
Interesting, there's another COC I'll be submitting shortly on the other side of the bank from the Marston Street project. There was some basins down below by the river that were built.
That might have been in Lawrence, or is that older? Because I don't
I
remember
don't know
that
the
project.
timeline, but that's one of the ones on the list that we,
Okay.
I'll be.
It might-
Boundary is the Shawshing River.
It might
Yeah, so it's
predate
on the
me.
North Andover side, yeah. Yeah, I think it just like jets out a little right there.
Right up
Yeah.
Sutton Street, still not, Merrimack Sutton.
Yeah.
It's a
Oh
mess.
goodness, that one.
Use the town, use
I just
the river
am
as
used to
the-
not being able to
as the
slide.
town
The river and
boundary.
the highway. The
So
river
it
and the
keeps
highway.
moving, the town line keeps moving with the mouse.
No. See, it doesn't work. Okay. I don't recall us reviewing the other side of the
Okay.
street, so I thought maybe that was out of jurisdiction.
Yeah, that's,
I can't find the riverfront line, though. Removed.
my copy here. It's not great.
Pitch of pavement. Anybody see a riverfront line over there?
Oh, there's 200-foot outer riparian zone. So yeah, it does actually cross through there.
Does it hit the project? Oh,
So
okay.
half of it, I guess.
Okay.
Any questions?
No.
Doug? Motion?
So it would be, again, full and final COC.
So
Second.
all those in favor, say aye. Opposed? Right, James. You're all set.
All right, thank you.
And, yeah, like I said, I'll- and, the two other projects, next couple weeks.
They're trying to get these closed out in anticipation of starting the, I would assume, the Mass Ave Chickering
Yeah, I
project.
don't know what the date is for that. I think the spring is where
Okay.
that's sold, so, yeah, that's my,
It's good to get them checked off, and now you know what they're going to be looking for, so.
Yeah, I already got points for those ones, so I just need to put a plan together, so.
Excellent,
All right.
thanks.
You can stay at the table to form a quorum, recuse from the vote, abstain from the vote.
Randy pointed out, too, that since the request was gotten in on time, that voting on the actual extension isn't anything, he didn't think that that would be,
I think just a matter of procedure, I think Lou stays at the table to maintain the quorum.
quorum.
He abstains from the vote, doesn't participate in the discussion. And that we.
That
we
was the
keep-
other option
we keep a
discussed,
quorum.
so, okay.
Yeah.
And it's only, the other matters being continued, so it's only for the extension.
Okay.
So you would have to take over chairing, though, I assume, for that matter.
All right, so we'll entertain a request to extend, to continue for the bond release. That's the second question. Motion made to continue, okay. Second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. So that one's continued.
With
So-
one abstention, with one recusal.
Correct. So now it's the matter of the extensions before us, which we do need to act on.
Right,
Okay, but we're all set with that.
right, yeah. I mean, he's presented everything, the status of the project,
Mhm.
what they anticipate having to do. I have no issues with continuing, giving them the one-year extension. They requested a two-year extension, but the bylaw only allows you to give one year, and then a second 1 year, so.
Okay.
Move that we issue an extension for 242-1672, 492 Sutton Street.
Second.
Motion made, second, all in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous, with one abstention. Jamie, on the first one, Lou abstained from that call as well.
Okay.
All right.
So,
Next we have enforcement orders, 422 Waverly Road.
We did it.
no, we
No.
didn't. We let him go and just
All
said
right.
we would continue it. So I guess I had said 1 year for the monitoring, or we could just continue it to the spring when he puts the plants in. I mean, it's only 4 shrubs. I don't see tying them to a year of monitoring on 4 shrubs. So I would say continue it to the second June meeting.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, and that's unanimous. And the enforcement order on 20. Oh, yeah, we did it. That's right.
We have a decision.
Now we only need the decision.
Yep.
430 Rogers from Town of Northampton. This is, which one is, oh, this is the trail. Okay.
This is the trail from last meeting. This is a pretty standard order of conditions. With the exception of a couple questions. One, do we want to bond it? I mean, it isn't, I think the proximity of the project to the resource area was why we had a trail come before the commission, but I'm guessing.
How's it being built? Going up to bid, or are they hiring a contractor, or
I
doing
think
it
this would
themselves?
go out, I think Jeans had said at the meeting that this would go out to bid, unless it can be done with some of the town's existing contracts.
So if they go up to bid, they're not gonna waive the bond on bid bonds or sureties. They're gonna require the contractor to post all those. Why should we waive a bond?
Okay. Well, I was just recommending 1,000. I mean, there's only one area of work where they're not working on that existing trail. They're just putting in a guardrail and stuff so that, to prevent people from falling down the slope.
I would double check with them because they probably have ACO do it.
Well, that's it. They might try to do it within existing contracts if there's room to do it that way, but this has to be done in the summer, so it would be,
Because the job itself is, if it's under 50,000, they can do it in-house.
okay, so does that mean you want to bond it or not bond it?
Well, that's what we gotta find out.
We can't, we have to issue this. It's been it'll be 21
Okay,
days.
Well, then,
$1,000 bond's not worth arguing over.
no.
Okay.
Leave it in.
So
Just hate
could we allow the
themselves.
field inspector to be the monitor of this particular project? I mean, if the parties that we're talking about working on this are the parties working on this, then would we monitor it?
You're saying self-monitor.
Well, our field inspector would monitor the project once a week, just like any other monitor.
Are you inclined to issue an enforcement order against yourself?
No.
That's a test.
No, I hate to see the town incur any more expense than it has to. I
Yeah,
think it's-
we could
For a
self-monitor.
trail project, I'm
Self-monitor,
fine with it for
self-monitor.
lots of other, yeah, all right. 52 is the long-term O&M plan. And then as-built, we wouldn't necessarily as-built a trail project, so I would strike the as-built condition and just require that the engineer certify that the work was conducted in compliance.
Well, if we ever get an as-built for the high school, maybe that'll be on there.
We do have an as-built for the fields, though.
Well, we're getting close.
I don't know about that.
The building where all the utilities are or not.
My son with the first graduating class, I think he's 15th anniversary?
So as-built or no as-built?
Well, I think if it's a trail around the field, you gotta
Yeah.
have built for the field, you gotta have built for the
Okay,
trail.
that's kind of what I thought. Okay, so that's it.
Okay. Motion?
Are you saying two different things? You're saying we should have an as-built
Yeah.
because of, you're saying waive it. Yeah, I thought
No,
we-
he's saying we have an as-built of the field. We have it, so we have an as-built of the trail, I thought is what you were
You
saying.
don't have it, because the trail's not shown on the as-built.
Right.
Just the fence for the field, and then you've got the fall off into the wetlands.
No,
Beside it.
it's constructed. I mean, that's where people stand and watch the,
There's no trail constructed.
right, they're gonna put the stone dust there to make it a trail.
I think we should get a plan, but if we're not gonna go out and hire a surveyor. The town engineer's gonna give us a plan that we put in the file.
They can do it, they can
Yeah.
sketch it in. That's-
Exactly. We need something in the file. I don't want to ever be accused of not
So,
requiring it of
an
ourselves.
as-built plan,
No, we should treat the town the same way we treat anything else.
We
well,
sure
this,
should.
but we don't as-built trails, is what I'm saying. So for this, we're looking for an as-built, for a GPS survey located trail plan or something?
Well, if you already have an as-built for the field.
Yes.
And it shows the fence around the field.
Yes.
You know where the trail is.
Okay.
Just sketch it in when you're
Because
done.
it follows the
Put it in the
fence.
record.
And they can sketch it in.
So we want an as-built of the trail location.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it. Okay, so now we can approve as amended when you're ready.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's unanimous. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.